Kevin Cooney, I'm sure, is ready to go, too. We're bringing him on to join this fun and hectic conversation. He's been on the Phillies beat since 2003, writer for Forbes.com. Bring him in now to get his thoughts on the Phillies and much more. Kevin, how you doing today, man? Thanks for joining.
I'm good. Where are we going?
I'm letting Josh decide that, but we can go anywhere, man. Wherever you want. Hopefully it's inside because it's about 110 degrees outside today.
Well, it's either that or Hawaii, so I guess that's the two options. Yeah, sure, I'll stay inside. You know?
Wait, did you say that or Hawaii? Why is that the two options?
Yeah. Because I decided it was going to be. That's all.
Oh, okay. So my bad. I like where your head's at. Hawaii it is. All right, well, the Phillies may be vacationing to Hawaii sooner than they want if they continue down the path that they've been going down lately. Big win last night to stay afloat, I guess. Jose Bautista, opening day there with the Phillies. He produces. He gets on base 4 times. Big RBI. Jake Arrieta, although, looked awful. I mean, this team's all over the place. What's the pulse on this team right now? What are your thoughts on where this team's at?
I think if the one thing we've looked at these numbers all year, and the one number that I always kind of focus on with a team to see, all right, are you legit or are you not legit, is run differential. And obviously, I mean, this is a team that, at one point was 14 games over 500, but, their run differential was maybe 45, 46, plus 45, plus 46, as opposed to a team like the Braves, I think, which were in the hundreds, the 120s, 130s. You look at, obviously Boston's a whole different class. But, I mean, The idea was that they were winning so many of these one-run games. They were winning so many games where you kind of figure, okay, at some point the law of averages is going to even out. And it has. That's what August has been. This has been a team that probably is not as bad as it has looked at times in August, just evening out to probably what they are, which is maybe a team that's 3 to 5 games over 500 when this is all said and done. Is that going to be enough to win the division? I would kind of doubt it. Could it maybe sneak in the conversation for a wild card? It could, but I, again, kind of doubt it. And it's the tease this year, guys. I mean, this is what it was. It's a tease of what they could be.
Yep.
And it's a tease because you also saw that this was a division that, quite frankly, was there for the taking with Washington falling apart. And they just were, they just didn't have the horses really get over the hump.
Does this look like a team that's run out of gas? I've heard that phrase a lot in the past week or two. Or is it just more of they're coming back down to earth?
I think it's a little bit of both. The running out of gas is, I think you could compartmentalize it. Running out of gas are the 3 starting pitchers not named Aaron Nola and Jake Arrieta.
Yeah.
Pivetta, Velasquez, and Eflin all seem to have just kind of hit that wall that you see young pitchers hit in September when they haven't been through a full season in the majors. And I think that's what's kind of happened here. I also, look, there's a lot of holes in that lineup, and some of the holes are veteran holes. I mean, given what he did last night, it's easy to say, well, Carlos Santana has been a disappointment. It's just flat out. We can talk about he had a big moment last night, but it's just not been there for most of the season. Scott Kingery, a young guy, I think it's fair to say has been a disappointment. You really didn't get to see J.P. Crawford because J.P. Crawford was hurt from June on, and even then he was hurt before that. You'll see a little bit of him in September, you would think, but there's just a lot of pieces here that are just maybe not ready to contend, and I think that's maybe what August showed.
Kevin, you wrote a piece the other day on Forbes.com talking about the fundamentals and the lack thereof, really, and you've been covering the Phillies since 2003. Is this the worst defensive team you've seen since you've covered them?
They've had some bad ones. 2015 was pretty bad, but that was the talent just wasn't there. This one, you kind of see the talent in some spots being there, and just the errors of it's either the errors of effort, okay, or it's the errors of just, having brain cramps, and that's why, the other night, the one that gets me is Santana. And he's had a couple of them this year. A couple times where he's forgotten how many outs there were. And then, quite honestly, you're playing back at a 3-0 game, man on third, and a ball hits you, and you get the out at first. Don't, with one out. Okay, so that's the second out. Don't force it. And that's what he did, and the throw goes high, and, nobody's backing up because there's no ability for anybody to get there that quick to back up the play. And suddenly it's 3-2, and you open the door again. I mean, this is where these are the type of mistakes you can't put that on a manager. That's something. It's not Gabe Kapler or his coaching staff that you look at back, looking and wonder what is going on here. That's the stuff that a veteran should know through years of playing in the league, and also, to be honest, it's stuff that's way down in the development line. There are times where it's okay to just take the out, get the second out, and move on. And there's been a lot of those types of occasions this year, and I think that that's something that, if I'm the Phillies, will probably be looked at going forward more in their minor league system than it is at the major league level.
You mentioned how you can't blame Kapler for it, and I agree with you. I think overall this year he's done a good job. Obviously, some things to point out, mistakes, but that's expected in a manager's first year. Do you like the direction that this team is headed, and how do you grade Kapler's managing performance so far in his first year?
Well, they're going to finish at a plus 18 or so, okay? If you want to look at wins, losses, there's going to be a pretty sizable gap. So you got to give that level of improvement, a bit of a thumbs up. Are there moments where the manager has looked not bewildered? That's maybe too cute for his own good. Absolutely. I mean, you date back to opening day in Atlanta. That was too cute. It's overthinking it. But he's also a rookie manager, and the one thing you got to give Gabe Kapler is that this team has played hard for him most of the season. I mean, do they throw the clunker in? Yeah, every team's going to throw a clunker in over 162. But more nights than not, they respond with at least a solid, strong performance or effort. Maybe the performance isn't always there. And obviously in August, that's been the problem. But the effort has never, dropped, really. And, for a young manager, you hope he's learned from the mistakes he's made. It's going to be fascinating to see what he does in September when he has a full 40-man to himself once the minor league playoffs are done, and to see how much he micromanages and how long these games are going to be with, I'm sure, like a 20-man bullpen. But it's going to be fascinating for me to see how he grows between year one and year two. That's where you really get a better indication of what type of manager Gabe Kapler is going to be.
Kevin, Scott Grayson, you mentioned that you kind of called this the tease, and then you followed that up and you said how some guys have been disappointing this year, which I totally agree with you. What kind of an exciting offseason could this be for the Phillies? If this was the tease, how close are they in your mind to taking the next step where it's expected?
Well, the names Machado and Harper are going to be linked to them all winter until, they leave Las Vegas at the winter meetings. I think they need one more big bat. I think that, quite honestly, they need to kind of figure out the bullpen situation and solidify that. And by solidify that is, look, I get going into this year, you couldn't really, call for a closer. When you only win 65, 66 games, you don't really need a closer. Now you do. Now you better be certain who you're putting in the ninth inning. Could it be Sir Anthony Dominguez? It could be. Could it be Hector Neris again? It could be. They are definitely parts of the equation, but it wouldn't be a bad idea to go look for somebody who's a little more of a veteran who's been through this if you're going to make playoff runs. Guys, I don't think it would hurt them to go look for another starter, because it could also solidify the aspect of, you can move Velasquez or Pivetta back to the bullpen and get another starter, and you're going to run in, you would think 3 solid starters out there with big game experience. Could have a potential Cy Young finalist this year in Nola and Arrieta and all that. It's always better to have pitching. That's what Matt Klentak has told us. You could never have too much pitching. Well, I think that one of the mistakes they made at the trade deadline this year, and it was one of maybe Matt Klentak's only mistakes at this trade deadline, I would have gone out and gotten Cole Hamels. And I've been pretty adamant about that because I felt that the innings limits on the young pitchers were going to catch up to him, or the innings totals on the young pitchers were going to catch up to him. And I felt they would have been better off getting another pitcher. But, that's something I would keep an eye on going into the offseason. But obviously, look, there's still another month here, so they could get into the playoffs, and everything we're saying here could completely change. But it feels like right now that they're going to fall just short.
It's funny you mentioned Hamels. We just talked about that before we brought you on, and we're in total agreement with everything you just said. When you talked about Gabe Kapler, I thought that you characterized him the perfect way, saying that he at times tries to get too cute. Just curious, right now with the team struggling a little bit, he has, changed the lineup almost every night. It's been, he's trying to make something happen there, and now he's also going to bring Aaron Nola in on 1 day shorter rest this weekend. How do you feel he's managing that side of it? And, the cookie cutter old school manager would never do that kind of stuff. But I kind of like that he is kind of tweaking some things and trying to give this team a shot in the arm. How do you feel about that stuff?
Well, the one tweak I think he has to do with his lineup is, in my opinion, he's eventually got to put Rhys Hoskins in the 4 spot. And I get that there's this modern thinking that you have to have your best hitter hitting, in second or third just to get him more at bats per game, and I understand it. But the people he's been throwing, he had Cesar Hernandez hitting third the other night, and he had Herrera hitting 4th the other night, and Santana's not a cleanup hitter really. If Wilson Ramos is going to be here next year, maybe coming down the stretch, I would put him maybe occasionally in the cleanup spot, but I think you need to get Hoskins up at the cleanup spot. And that type of thinking is why I kind of hope he learns from, that you don't always have to toe the line on that type of a book. And that's the one criticism I have this year, is the fact that, he's altered the lineup, and I think that's fine. And I think the experimenting is good. And what he did with Franco dropping in the 8th was great earlier in the year. But he also has to realize that his best hitter has to go in his best power hitter has to go in a spot where he's going to have guys steadily on base for him. And he's not doing that right now.
Kevin, I touched on Arrieta when I first brought you on, and I want your thoughts on him because the Phillies bring him in here for this season and moving forward to be that veteran guy, to be that guy that, guess what, every 5 days, especially come August and September, when the team needs to get on someone's back, they can get on his, and they feel comfortable about doing that. Last night, coming off 2 losses, it's his ball, and he goes 3 innings. He gets shelled, and 75 pitches. He gets 1 swing and miss. How do you feel about Arrieta, and how have you, what's your grade for him on this season?
The one thing I would be concerned about Arrieta is the lack of swings and misses. And when you're not a guy who's going to get guys to miss bats, you're going to have nights like last night. Has he come across at times as a little whiny? Yeah. I mean, that's pretty clear. The conversation the griping he had in, back in San Francisco about the shifts and everything, kind of set him back for a couple weeks. It seemed like that got in his mind. I think you've learned more about that. You've learned more about him because of incidents like that, and even like games like last night where you kind of need to step him up. Is he an ace? No, he's not an ace anymore, but he's still a solid pitcher for a rotation. You hope that maybe that moving forward, he could get a full spring training. Remember, he didn't have that this year. It felt a little bit shotgun because he waited so long to sign. You hope that maybe that will carry the way moving forward.
Hector Neris had a strong game last night, and since returning from AAA, he's pitched 8 scoreless innings. He struck out 18 of 29. when he got sent down there, he looked like a guy that confidence was completely broken. Seems like he's now a guy that Kapler and the team can really rely on when they need to go to the pen in big situations. What are your thoughts on how he's looked since he's returned from AAA and how reliable he can be moving forward?
It's the question of mechanics for Neris. I mean, when Neris's mechanics are very good, he is unhittable, and that's exactly what we've seen since he came back, and that's what you saw really at the end of last year. The problem is he gets in these mechanical funks. He did it last year after giving up the the 3 home runs in Los Angeles that seemed to throw that team in 17 on a spiral. And then this year he's been, he had that for most of the year, and that's what he ended up going down to the minors. Whether it's tipping pitches or just not, right arm angle and all that, he has to find this out if he's going to be a valuable pitcher at the back end of a bullpen again for a contender. And, you can't afford those 4-week lapses. And look, I think Neris has the talent. I think it would be stupid for the Phillies to give up on it. I think they're seeing what kind of talent he has. But the problem is that he's got to adjust to make sure that he doesn't hit that gas point, which ends up being a real problem.
Kevin, MLB.com did a poll the other day about the NL Cy Young Award. And I want your thoughts on where you rank Nola and if you give him a legitimate chance in possibly winning the Cy Young. That poll, he was a distant third. I think he finished with 36 points. DeGrom was the overwhelming favorite, and then followed by Scherzer, and Nola was way at the bottom. Talk about Nola's season so far, and is he clearly getting overlooked, or is this on a national level seem about right?
Well, I think you could classify in a normal year, Aaron Nola would be winning the Cy Young. But it's not a normal year. What Jacob DeGrom has done is nothing short of remarkable. And, this is going to be a case, guys, where, back in, I want to say it was 2010, 2011, when Felix Hernandez won the Cy Young, it was a trumpet of of old school analytics against, or old school stats versus new school analytics. And really, at this point, I almost wonder if we're going to end up seeing that with Nola, because, you see the DeGrom numbers, and they're just jaw-dropping. But they're the old school numbers, the ERA and everything. When you look at what Nola's WAR is at this point, Nola's looking at maybe finishing the season with a 10-11 WAR. I really wonder if that'll narrow the gap. If you're asking me right now how the Cy Young race is going to go, Jacob DeGrom's going to win it, and probably will win it fairly comfortably. I think Nola will finish second. I think the performance he's had these last 2 outings against Scherzer opened a lot of eyes across the country. Plus the fact that it may come down to whether the Phillies finish better than the Nationals. Just on that impression of, hey, the Phillies were a team that came from nowhere, and he was their clear most valuable player. But I think it's going to be the Grom's race to lose.
Kevin, the attendance last night was embarrassing. 22,252. We've been talking about it a lot. I don't know what the reason is. I mean, I have the obvious answers, but I just want your thoughts on it, because it seems like right now just the game of baseball in general, not trying to call out Philly fans, but just the game of baseball is really in some murky waters. Do you agree with that? And if so, what do they need to do to maybe turn this around or get more viewership?
I think to get more viewership, it may be just to change his name to football and call it, or the NBA at this point. I mean, it's just the way it is. The game is slow, and I'll give Rob Manfred credit. He's tried. He's tried to speed the game up, and you're talking about pitch clocks, and they've tightened the actual stuff around the game a lot more. Walk-ups aren't taking forever, all that. That being said, there's a lot of reasons. Guys, you're much younger than me, but baseball, and this is going to sound like an old man moment, so I'm going to scream, get off my lawn right now. Baseball is way more expensive than it was. If you want to go on a ratio of where incomes have gone over the last decade and how ticket prices have rose at like a rate way above that. Okay, that's one.
Yeah.
Between ticket prices, parking, all that. Two, every game is on pretty much either cable is available, either on your app or on television or whatever. So there's not necessarily on a 100-degree night like last night a need to fly out to the park. When you also add in at the end of August, most schools have gone back, which I think is ridiculous, and you guys down the shore know that better than we do, that the summer season's been shortened because all these schools have gone back. I think that really hurts the game, and it hurts attendance at this time of year going in the pennant races.
Yeah, I completely agree. Now, the Phillies have a day off today, and then they have an important series with the Cubs. How do you think they'll fare? They do get to avoid Cole Hamels, who's absolutely lights out right now. What do you predict with this weekend series with the Cubs? Well,
they have to win a series here. They haven't won a series really since the beginning of the month when they beat up on Miami during that alumni weekend thing. You got to take at least 2 or 3, and you got to hope that Atlanta. The one thing that works to the Braves or the Phillies' advantage against the Braves is the Braves have like 1 day or 2 days off left on their entire schedule, and the Phillies have like 4 or 5. So, will fatigue become a factor? I don't know, but in my mind, they need to. Quite frankly, they just need to concentrate on themselves. Clean things up. You can have a solid month, miss the playoffs, and everybody will feel better. And I think that's where this season's going. But it has to start by winning a series. And if you beat the Cubs, then some of the energy is back. Otherwise, people are counting the Thursday night for the NFL.
Yeah. Well, he's Kevin Cooney. Follow him on Twitter at Kevin Cooney, all one word. Forbes.com. Kevin, I appreciate you coming on and spending a few minutes with us. And we'll have to follow up and figure out that Hawaii trip.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.